Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, Hemp Analytical Trends plus Regulatory Updates. I'm excited to have Vanessa Snyder and Grace Bandong here with me today hosting the webinar. I am Amy Knock and I will be moderating today's session. Before we begin, I just wanted to let you know a little bit more about how the webinar will run. The webinar is being recorded and the slides and recording will be available to you within 3 business days. A short Q&A session will follow the presentation to answer any viewers submitted questions. During the webinar, you can submit questions you have using the webinar sidebar menu. Select the Questions tab, type in your question, then hit the Enter key on your keyboard. Remember, you can submit questions anytime throughout the webinar. That concludes my very brief introduction today. Vanessa, I will now pass it over to you.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Vanessa Snyder. I am one of the business development directors here at Eurofins, and I specialize in our hemp botanicals and OTC services and solutions. I am based here in Wisconsin, pretty close to our main largest nutritional chemistry lab in Madison.
And hi everyone, and thanks Amy, and thank you all for joining us. And I'm Grace Bandong, and I am based in Madison, the largest nutritional chemistry lab, as Vanessa mentioned. And I'm the business unit manager lead for contaminants here. So I lead the contaminants and inorganics laboratory in Madison. And I have been working with Eurofins for close to 28 years, and I have been in contaminants for as long and a little bit longer than that, dealing with contaminants in food and also currently contaminants in hemp and developing safety programs based also, and also doing risk assessments for chemicals. And that's all I have, and I will turn it back to Vanessa.
Thanks, Grace. Your 28 years definitely beats my 11. So to give you all a roadmap of where we're going today, we just have a brief 30 minutes together. Grace and I will spend about 20 minutes or so covering some slides, presenting on the following topics. And then, as Amy mentioned, we'll have some time for question and answers and open discussion. And as always, you will have our contact information at the end of the presentation, so feel free to reach out to us if you don't get a chance to ask the question during the session today, or if you think of it during the middle of the night. So we'll cover some testing considerations and what we're doing here at Eurofins to adapt to the ever-evolving industry needs, and then provide a brief update on some of the industry organizations we are active in. Next slide, Amy. So most of you should be well aware that testing for cannabinoids does come with its set of challenges and difficulties. And oftentimes we're actually approached by companies who are really struggling to find a lab to get reliable, accurate, and reproducible potency results. And Eurofins, always striving to be on the forefront of the highest quality and scientific expertise, is really pushing for that standardization for testing within the industry. So Eurofins, with collaboration of the University of Chemistry and Technology in Prague, actually developed a method to be used for measuring cannabinoids in dried hemp material or dried hemp flower. And back in April of 2020, AOAC did approve this method to be the official method of analysis for measuring those cannabinoids in the dried hemp flower. Now, although this method was initially created for the dried material, additional validations were done and approval was given to be used for all plant material. Now, of course, as industry has continued to expand, we have seen CBD and other cannabinoids being added to all sorts of matrices, in which we have responded to that need by performing method extensions to be able to test for the cannabinoids within these various matrices, topicals, gummies, oils, the list goes on. Another industry need we have responded to is the need for a lower level THC threshold. So this could be for companies that may want to claim THC on their product, or to address some stringent regulatory requirements such as lower THC LOQs for countries overseas, or just a better understanding of the cannabinoid profile within the product. So we have fully validated our LC-MS methodology, and that does have an LOQ of 1 ppm or 0.0001%. And that method does cover 15 cannabinoids. The one it does not cover is CBNA. So this method is great, again, for those who are looking for those trace amounts of THC or want to better understand their minor cannabinoid profile for perhaps marketing purposes of the product. Next slide, Amy.
Hi. So I'll take you to another thing that new thing that we had to do from our client request, that this was needed by the industry. So last year we went on, we obtained our CDPHE certification for hemp testing. That's the Colorado Department of Health, and there are, for the certification process, the biggest challenge that we came across was the pesticide testing. The full pesticide panel, as per the Colorado regulations 1010-21, 21.7 is extensive and also a bit challenging because it has it has added compounds that are normally not found in most of the pesticide residue screens that we do for hemp. Plus, it also required very low limit of quantitations, up to 0.01. So it required a full method validation in addition to what we currently have. And one of the things is because we do a lot of work with infant formula, which of course also requires very low limit of quantitations, we were able to leverage that and use that as a jumping point for developing the method for to meet the full panel list for the Colorado. The other contaminants that the certification also that we did were heavy metals, mycotoxins, and residual solvents. And within them, there were some minor challenges, like, for example, needing a 5-point calibration curve, which in a lot of instances we normally do for 4-point calibration curves, and we had to extend some of those. And in some of the tests that we normally residual recovery or spikes are not routinely used. The certification required some recoveries, and we had to extend that to our residual solvents method, and also adding some internal standards to some of our methods that normally would not require some internal standards. So it was great for us to work with the certification and to obtain the certification, because it helped us improve our methods and make them even more robust than they currently are. And the next slide, please, Amy. And the next thing I'd like to go into is the industry is moving also towards the OTCs, the over-the-counters. And right here, I'm just showing you a pictorial of the life cycle of the product. So, you know, as most everything, it starts from concept development. I call it from ideation, and then up to the very end where you make it to the contract manufacturer, and then you keep going as you make new products. You have that internal cycle between, after you finished one product, now you have to make a new product, and then you have to go back to stability, and then the quantification testing of your API, and then you go through release testing. So as you can see through this life cycle, there's different stages. The lighter blue ones are the product development stages. Then you do the commercial manufacture, and then continuous improvement. And a lot of the current testing that would involve the hemp industry would cover in the area where it says stability studies, API, and the release testing. And for this, we would be following 20 CFR 210 and 21 CFR 211, which calls for GMP practices, as opposed to 111 and 110 and 111 for dietary supplements. So, sorry, I'm having, hello?
Yeah, we're still here, Grace. Everything is still coming across, yes.
Okay, so because it's disappeared from my screen. So next slide, please. And so the GMP requirements, and there is one of the key things to be able to do the testing for GMP and to meet the requirements of 210 and 211 is a quality management system, which is a critical part of that. And there are 4 things that we usually focus on, and that's the validated systems and equipment that you have. And it's important to have a centralized IT infrastructure for that, because you want everything to be documented and recorded and validated as far as your software systems. And then you have to have your test methods. And then that's one of the key things where you have to always determine suitability for your matrix and differentiate between whether you need to verify or whether you need to validate a matrix for either for release or for the readiness of your API. And then traceability, always an important consideration for a quality management system and also for GMP. And the most important thing, of course, is your teams. The people that are working on your GMP projects need to be trained and need to understand the system, the GMP system that they're working under, because that's where a lot of the failures happen. It's not really in the execution of the test or the tests themselves, but in the documentation. And so there's rigorous training that's necessary for the teams that need to be performing GMP studies. And that's usually, the need for that is usually defined in your quality management system. And next slide.
Thanks, Grace. So we discussed some of the specific testing considerations you should think about and some of the challenges industry is faced with. But it can also be challenging to find and select a third-party partner to help you navigate these waters. So we've listed out some guidance and things you should be asking your third-party provider, or things you should consider when vetting your third-party provider. So first and foremost is transparency. Ask to audit your lab, ask them questions. If they're unwilling to share any information, that might be a little bit of a red flag. And then next is quality. Obviously, if you're producing a quality product, you really want your testing to be high quality as well. So ensure that your laboratory has a written quality manual and SOPs, and really ask to confirm that the methods are validated for your specific product and matrices. And then, of course, with the proliferation of CBD in various products and in the marketplace, we've seen a proliferation of hemp testing labs as well. And a lot of times those labs are claiming to have the fastest turnaround time, but it's really important to understand if this can be consistently hit. So really asking your laboratory to confirm their key performance indicators for meeting this turnaround time, ensuring that they have redundancies built in their lab, multiple staff scientists to be able to accommodate for any potential bottlenecks, forces of nature. I hate to say the C word, but if COVID runs through the lab, is there another facility that can help pick up the work so that you're not getting huge delays in your operations or product release? In regards to accreditations, certifications, and licenses, this pretty much speaks for itself. but it's always a good idea to ask your laboratory for this documentation. And then consider the support services your lab has to offer. Do they have senior scientists on staff to help you troubleshoot any testing results or product formulation? Or do they have consultants that can help you navigate the regulatory environment? As we all know, that is very fun right now for hemp. So again, just keep an eye out for some red flags. It might be easiest to just go with the lowest cost provider, but there can always be hidden costs to that, not only just monetary, but time and resources as well. Next slide, Amy. All right, so moving on to the fun stuff. I am a firm believer that we are all better together in this industry, and Eurofins is really proud to be a part of these industry organizations. Hopefully you're all familiar with these I have up on the screen right now. If not, I really urge you to take a look at their websites or talk to members of the organizations to see how you can get involved. Collaboration really is key in moving industry forward. Next slide. So first I'd like to mention US Hemp Authority. So Hemp Authority, it truly is the industry's self-regulating body. They work to provide best standards and practices across the industry to ensure not only consumer confidence in products, but retailer confidence as well. In speaking with the president of the US Hemp Authority, Marielle Weintraub, she did let me know that version 4.0 will be coming out soon and will be available for public comment. So be sure to keep an eye out for that and submit your feedback. Next slide. Next, I'd like to touch on the Hemp Feed Coalition. For those of you who aren't aware, the coalition's mission is to gain federal approval for hemp ingredients and its byproducts to be used commercially in animal feed, thus opening up that market to hemp producers and processors. So it is very exciting. We did submit our first application for hemp seed meal to be used for laying hens. And we did receive feedback from FDA CDM with some questions and a couple concerns that we have since addressed. So it is in a bit of a waiting period right now. What I'd really like to call to action today is that these applications are very time consuming. They require a lot of data, a lot of testing, a lot of scientific review. And of course, that means a lot of money. So I urge you to consider becoming a member of this organization or consider volunteering your time on one of our committees. And I'd be more than happy to talk with anyone who wants to learn more about what the organization is doing. Next slide. And these are just some of the feed trials that are ongoing right now. A couple to note, at Colorado State University, there is a lamb trial that has been completed, and we're just waiting on the final report. And the same goes for the study at NDSU for cattle. And Hemp Feed Coalition, plans to work on submitting these applications if funding can be found. Again, these are quite costly. So if you know anyone who is interested in supporting this work, please let us know. Next slide. And then last but not least, I'd like to make a call out to the Hemp Industries Association. I was recently elected to the board, and it is Women's History Month, and Caitlin Wired from US Hemp Roundtable was also recently elected, making the board female majority, which is super exciting. There's also 2022 sponsorships available for the organization. And again, we'd love to have more involvement, so please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. And that wraps up the slides for today. Again, we really thank you for your time and attention. Here is our contact information. And Amy, I will go ahead and pass it over to you for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Vanessa. And for everyone here, I'm going to go ahead and just add a poll question up here on the screen. So again, I would ask if anyone would like a Eurofins representative to follow up with them today. to certainly select yes, and we will make that contact. So we have had a number of questions that have come into the chat here, a lot of really good ones. I'm just going to look through here. The first question that I have is, what matrices can be tested for by the LCMS method?
Yeah, I can take that one, Amy. So the LCMS method was initially validated on isolates and distillates. We've also done validation on behalf of the Hemp Feed Coalition for hemp seeds, hemp protein, hulls, hemp meal, and oil. So if there are additional matrices that someone might be interested in running by the LCMS method, feel free to reach out to us, and we can look into the validation for that.
Great, thank you.
I'd just like to add a little something to that. That really is the LCMS method for cannabinoids testing, because we have other LCMS methods for other tests. So just to clarify, that's the LCMS testing for cannabinoids.
Great, thanks, Grace. The next question that has come in here, are you able to test for D8 or D10?
Yes, so Delta 8 has been part of our profile. We are able to test for that. The lab is currently working with D10. I think also maybe D6 and D7. I know the D10 is on a higher priority, as we've heard some industry need for that. It is not yet commercially available at this time, but the lab is working on it.
Great, thanks, Vanessa. Next question here, when will the next HFC application be submitted?
Oh, that's a good question. So we don't have a time frame as of yet, as we're still working through that hemp seed meal application. Like I had mentioned, they are quite costly and do take up a lot of resources. So we are looking for additional sponsors and support to keep that momentum going.
Great, thank you. The next one here is about OTC product testing GMP. The question here is, when do you do verification and when do you do validation, and really what is the difference?
Yeah, so the first, just a simple answer, the difference between verification and validation is it's a lot, the number of samples you need to test or the number of recoveries you have to do for verification is a lot less than validation, and the time needed for the validation is a lot longer, and it could be thousands of dollars of difference between a verification and a validation. And the difference is, when do you need verification versus validation? If there is, for your compound of interest that you're looking for, or for your active compound, if there happens to be a monograph, a USB monograph, or a very defined compendial method for that particular, for the matrix that you have and the substance that you have, then you're okay to go with just verification. And also it depends on sometimes also the simplicity of the test that you need, because for example, pH, you probably would not be needing a validation for pH test, or maybe even verification you could, because it's such a simple test. And then when you need a validation is, like I said, when there's no monograph available for it, or there's no compendial method, or the matrix that you're wanting to test is not covered by the validation that was done for the conventional method. So that's when generally a full validation is needed.
Great, thank you. And it looks like I'm getting caught up here. I think we have one more question that is in here. It's about pesticides. What does your method cover and which matrices?
Well, see, the method that we have that got certified for the CDPHE is whatever is listed in the CCR for Colorado, and it includes all those compounds and at all those limit of quants that's needed, and it's for particularly for plant material and also for oil. And also, but I would need to, so for any other matrices outside of that, and especially if they get more complicated than just a straight oil extract, if there's other stuff in them, there is added verification that's needed. We have to do a suitability testing to determine if the method could work on the matrix that a new matrix that we get, because we get a lot of different matrices come into our lab, and also especially if you're wanting us to do it on finished product, we would definitely have to do some testing because some of the compounds are tricky to recover in other matrices.
Wonderful. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Vanessa and Grace, for your expertise today. And I just wanted to mention to everyone that you will receive a copy of the presentation as well as the recording, again, within those 3 business days. And if you did answer yes to a follow-up, we will certainly be in contact with you. And in case I missed any questions, we will follow up with those questions offline. So I want to thank everyone and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.